As I was just saying, your leader promised to stop the boats within 2 weeks of passing legislation. What would that legislation say, and what would you do to achieve that result that nobody's done before?
So we laid that out at the press conference in Oxfordshire less than 2 weeks ago, Operation Restoring Justice. So we would pass a reform government if the British electorate sees fit to deliver that the next election. We would, number one, pass the Illegal Migration Mass Deportation Act. That would mean not only leaving the ECHR, it would mean repealing the Human Rights Act, replacing it with a British Bill of Rights, and, critically, disapplying all of the international treaties that are used by activist judges to stop the deportation of illegal migrants, including convicted murderers and rapists. You've got to do all of those things.
Well, you can do all of that, but nobody on the beach at Calais is reading the legislation. What are you going to do to stop them getting in the boats and landing on the beach?
So here's what we do. Number one, we say, if you come to this country, so this legislation will make it so that if you come to the country illegally, you will never be eligible for asylum. End of story, full stop. Number two, if you come to the country illegally, you won't be allowed to roam free. You won't be allowed to roam free. You will be detained and you will be deported back to the country from which you came. So to the degree that is happening, the reality is, why would somebody get onto a boat only to go straight into a detention facility and be deported? It would be insane.
OK, well, talk about that. Just to get one thing clear, by the way, your colleague Richard Tice seemed vaguely insulted last week when I asked whether you'd put the Royal Navy into the Channel. And he wasn't quite clear whether they would be there, and if they were there, what they'd be doing. Because he said they wouldn't stop the boats, they'd observe. What's the deal? What are you going to do?
What we would need to say, the issue at the moment, the Royal Navy is more than capable of surveilling the Channel, more than capable of being deployed. Marines could easily go and stop those boats. The reason they don't is because what could they do with them? What could they do with them? All they can do is what Border Force currently does, which is insane. Border Force currently, as we speak, is offering a complimentary ferry service to these illegal migrants, where they pick them up and bring them back to our shores. The reform government will take them to a detention facility.
So were you in government, would you put the Royal Navy into the Channel or not?
Well, whether it's the Marines, whether it's Border Force, they will be detained, taken to a detention facility and deported, which means, Trevor, the boats stop coming. This is the point. The boats will stop coming. The boats will stop coming. It will be the Royal Navy or Border Force that do it. But again, Trevor, we've got to let's have a serious conversation about this. You tell me, do you think boats are going to keep coming when all that's happening is they're going straight to a detention facility and return back to their home country?
I have no idea about psychology. I'm asking you about...
I think you're being very modest, Trevor. I think you're being very modest.
I'm asking about the operations here. Would you put the Royal Navy, and now you're talking about the Marines, into the Channel, and what would they do? Would they sink the boats? Would they take people off boats? What would they do?
So the first and most important thing is the boats will stop coming. That's the first point. To the degree that somebody
about
starts
what you hope's going to happen. I'm asking you what instructions would you give the Royal Navy? I'm telling you what will happen when we pass legislation.
Well, let me give you some evidence of this. The Trump administration has cut... I'm answering your question. The Trump administration has cut illegal border crossings by 97%. Whatever you think of President Trump, the reason that has happened is because ICE has been deployed. They've arrested hundreds of thousands of people and deported hundreds of thousands of people. What's happened? People have stopped crossing the border. That is exactly why the small boats will stop coming, Trevor.
OK, so you're going to put snatch squads onto the streets of Birmingham.
Whether it's Border Force, these are unarmed, largely men in dinghies. We don't need a particularly formidable military to be able to take them to a detention facility.
The ICE operatives are armed. That's the example you just used.
Yeah.
These are armed men and women who go into factories. They went into a big technology factory the other day, took out 500 people. Are you saying that's what reform would do?
Trevor, the reason they are armed is almost all law enforcement personnel in America are armed because Americans are armed in the way that British people are not. So, no, we don't need UK Deportation Command unless they're going after people who are criminals.
I wasn't the person who raised America. You said this is what you wanted to do. I'm just asking you.
The point I was making is those mass arrests, those mass deportations have driven that behavioural change where people stop coming. It would be insane for people. Here's why they keep coming right now, Trevor. They're coming because they get free ferry service to our shores. They then get to get free hotels, free meals, free healthcare, free trips to the safari park, free trips to the cinema. Why wouldn't they come? Because we're a soft touch. And by the way, they're coming from France. They're not getting on a boat from Afghanistan or Pakistan or Iraq. They're getting on a boat from France because Britain is a soft touch, Trevor.
You're going to detain and deport them. Let's talk about detain. Where are they going to be detained?
They're going to be
shipping
detained.
containers?
They're going to be detained. Again, very similar. So we can look around the world at where things have worked and worked well. President Trump stood up 3,000 detention beds in 8 days. 3,000 detention beds in 8 days. That was this year in the state of Florida. You using steel modular structures. The notion that these things cannot be done is for the birds. They're not shipping containers. They're purpose-built modular steel structures that allow for significant detention capacity to build at a speed that has never been possible before.
OK, how many have you got in mind? How many of these camps?
So we've got a long list and we've got a short list. So we're going to need 24,000 in total. That will allow us to deport 288,000 per year. Currently, the country has just north of around 3,000 detention beds. So we're going to need about 21,000 more. So we think we're going to need anywhere between 15 and 25 sites.
You reckon that you can deport people back to where they came from? Yesterday, Nigel Farage told my colleague Beth Rigby that you'd send women back to Afghanistan. Now, given that that country's regime is by definition one under which any woman in the world could justifiably claim a well-founded fear of persecution, does that mean that you plan to abandon that definition of asylum?
What we are saying very clearly is no matter where you come from, if you come to the country illegally, without permission, you will never be granted asylum and you will be deported, yes.
Yeah, you're answering a different question to the one I asked you. Nigel Farage said that you would deport women back to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, women not allowed to speak, not allowed to show their faces in public. Anything that involves stepping out of line means they probably get lashed or worse. Women in Afghanistan could justifiably claim a well-founded fear of persecution, which is the core definition of a refugee. Would you send women back to Afghanistan?
Trevor, why on earth? So the reason why anyone who comes to the country illegally must be deported is because I put it to you, why is this government, why were the Tories OK with thousands of military-age men from Afghanistan, unvetted and undocumented?
I'm not asking about military-age men, I'm asking about women.
Mothers, Trevor, that's why mothers were protesting in Epping, because it is British women who are now being subjected to that very culture that you just laid out, the Afghanistan culture, which now British people are being subjected to.
Look, Nigel Farage just spent 3 days telling us that you are the only ones who speak the truth. You are direct, you talk honestly. I'm asking you a simple question. Are you OK sending women to Afghanistan where they will have a well-founded fear of persecution? Don't tell me about everybody else. Tell me about those women.
Well, I've answered your question several times because I'm saying anyone who comes to the country illegally will be deported. And by the way, I want to be clear that the best estimates say, this is really important, right? The best estimates suggest there's north of 1 million people in the country illegally, Trevor. Less than 2,000 of those are Afghan women and children. So 0.2% is the focus of your question. The reality is we have to focus on British people.
It doesn't matter whether it's focus.
Well, as Nigel said, look, I'll give you a very, very direct answer to that question. Nigel's been very clear. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom must be responsible for the rights of British citizens, look after British people. He cannot be held accountable for the actions of every despotic regime in the world. The last point I'll make is the British government is going to send 150 million quid of British taxpayers' money to Afghanistan this year alone. Let's start by negotiating, take back your illegal migrants, otherwise you won't get that.
OK, I'm understanding that women are going back to Afghanistan. Look, Lee Anderson, Andrea Jenkins, Nadine Dorries, Nigel Farage himself, all former Tories. Is there a danger that reform starts to look like a home for people who couldn't persuade the Conservative Party to abandon its one-nation tradition and become a nationalist party? And would you, for example, welcome Boris Johnson?
We certainly would not welcome Boris Johnson. No, that's never going to happen. And, in terms of the Reform Party, the Reform leadership, look, the reality is we are a group of people who are patriots. We share values. We want secure borders. We want to restore sovereignty. We want mass deportations. We want serious law and order. We need more prisons. We need to send people into prisons. If you share those values, then you're welcome in our party. But, by the way, I want to say this.
Are you saying Boris Johnson doesn't share those values?
Of course not. He threw open our borders. The Boris way, which was millions and millions of non-EU migrants flooding into the country post-Brexit, betraying every single person who voted Brexit, betraying every single person who gave him an 80-seat majority. Frankly, he was one of the worst prime ministers in British history.